to the Indian people. So we're going to go ahead and turn this over to Brother David Nance. Oh, and by the way, he told me to let everybody know not to get too distracted by how handsome he is. Preach, you know, they call it preacher's math. How, like, if there's 100 people here, the preacher says there's 200 people here. It applies to looks, too. Okay.
Thank you.
Good to see.
I introduced myself just a little bit more during the Bible class hour. If you weren't here in order to hear my introduction, I live in a little town called Covington, Tennessee. Anybody ever got a ticket going through there? Okay, a few you have, yeah. Well, I've been doing the India work since 2007, and like I say, I rehearsed some of my history a little bit during the Bible class hour, and so I won't do that. These brethren are passing out these flyers. They're going to have some of the information that I'm going to share with you. I apologize for changing the scripture reading just a moment ago. I actually thought I would deliver this part of my message during the Bible class hour, and then as we were discussing things just before the Bible class hour, we kind of made a last-minute switch. And so that's the reason for this. The Bible reading had to do, of course, with what Paul did when he came back to Antioch, which had sent him out on a mission field. He gathered the whole church together as we're gathered here this morning, and he rehearsed to them how God had opened the doors of faith for those Gentiles. And so what I want to do this morning is to tell you how God has opened the door of faith to the idolatrous worshipers in India, Hindus as we call them. I'm going to speak an awful lot this morning about what we are doing. And I hope you hear when I say we, I hope you hear you. Because the fact of the matter is that I am a small part of this Church of Christ India missions team. You are a small part of this Church of Christ India missions team. And many other people and congregations are small parts of this team. Together, God is using all of us to accomplish an amazing amount of good things. I think sometimes we kind of have a tendency to get caught up in our day-to-day work. Sometimes we call it rut, but sometimes we it's just day-to-day life. We focus on the same thing for breakfast, and then what are we doing for lunch? And it just keeps on going and going and going. So much so that we kind of begin to despair that God is going to do anything extraordinary with my life. But think about the birth of a child. How slow and unextraordinary that is. And then think of what Paul, or rather what David said. He said, "When I consider the work of your hands, the moon and the stars which you have ordained, what is man that you have noticed him?" And then he says, "Out of the mouths of babes and nursing children have you ordained strength because of your enemies and because of the avenger." You see, all of this seems slow. All of it seems so ordinary. Use the brother's word this morning, so mundane. I think it's time occasionally to step back and see the extraordinary thing that God is doing in your life through your participation in His church, and now specifically with your participation in this particular mission effort. Now, kind of way to introduce you just a little bit to the American side of our team. This is Ron Clayton, who you heard mentioned a little earlier. He lives in Hamilton, Alabama, which, if you're an Elvis fan, is just across the border from Tupelo, Mississippi. That's the Shrine of Elvis, by the way. This right here is Jerrison Renita Bullard, and you can see kind of the names here kind of got fouled up in the transfer from one computer to another, but you get the point. This is Jerrison and Juanita Bullard. They live in Manassas, Virginia. Now, these two brethren have been doing India mission work since the 1970s, and they got together in 1985 and formed the Church of Christ India Mission Team. And that's a part of the work that we are a part of. Now, this is Kyle Clayton. As you might guess, he's their son. All of us who are in India work have to come and go on a tourist visa. I've mentioned that a little bit in class today. But Kyle gets to live in India because he married an Indian, and that is tremendously important in the work that we do. So far as I know, he is the only American missionary who is able to live in India. And so that's just, I can't describe the importance of his presence there for the work we do. This is Michael Hughes, who lives in Marion, Arkansas. If you happen to go down to Memphis and you cross the Mississippi River, right the first exit, that's Marion. This is Ben Reniger. He lives in Fayetteville, Tennessee, which is north of Huntsville, Alabama, Redstone Arsenal, if you happen to know where that is. This is Ben Edwards. I'm getting messed up by these words. This is Ben Reniger. This is Jerry Edwards. He is living in Hopkinsville, Kentucky, just north of Clarksville, north of Nashville, off Interstate 24, and then that's little me. Any votes for who's good looking? I appreciate that. Yeah, thanks. I was actually looking for affirmation. This is a kind of an overview of the work. India is a land of 1.3 billion people. I did 10 years worth of work in Africa by God's grace. Africa is 9 times larger than India. But India has 300 million more people than all of Africa combined. This is the same population as is in China. Give you an idea of how large that population is. Today, 35,000 people will die in India. And yesterday and tomorrow. Think how large this population has to be for that many people to die today. And no one but their own family notices. Because it's just a part of normal life. Well, as many as are dying every day in India, 76,000 people are going to be born every day in India. And that's more than 2 to 1. More than 2 to 1. So their population is growing like unbelievable. Boom, 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 boom. It's just up, 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 up. Now, as exciting as all that is as a geography lesson, I'm not really trying to give you a geography lesson. What I'm wanting you to do is to wrap your minds around this work that God has opened for us to be a part of. You see, when a population is increasing so rapidly, the average age of the people there starts becoming younger and younger and younger. Average age of an Indian person is 25 years old. That means 1.3 billion people, and over half of them are 26 years old and younger. That is the world's largest youth group by a long shot. Now, what are a couple of things that you notice, you remember about young people? Well, everywhere I've ever worked, I've noticed that generally young people are more interested and more open-minded to life-changing conversations, and particularly including about Jesus. That's why most churches focus on young people, and they ought to. But there's something else about young people. Young people are also very willing to question the traditions of their elders. Have you ever noticed that? Oh, yeah. In India, the tradition of the elders is Hindu idolatry. Now, Hinduism has a great name of being one of the world's great religions, and I'll just tell you right off the bat, it doesn't deserve it. When Paul went to Greece, he found them worshiping the gods that the Greeks worshiped. When he went to Italy, he found Rome, he found them worshiping the gods that the Romans worshiped. When missionaries went up to the northern areas, northern Europe, they found them worshiping the gods that the Nordic people worship. By the way, 5 of our days of the week names come from those gods. And so when we went to Africa, various places, we found them worshiping the gods that the various African localities worship. You go to India, what are they doing? They're worshiping the gods that the Indians worship. That's all it is. It's idolatry. They worship rocks, sticks, stones, hills, trees, branches, you name it. Creeks, rivers, streams, ponds, hills, mountains. You know they worship cows, right? Okay, yeah. But that's not the only critter they worship. They worship monkeys. They worship elephants. They worship snakes and peacocks and rats. They worship any kind. You just can't imagine. India has been called the land of 10,000 gods. And I believe that's because people just got tired of counting. It's really amazing. It changes from place to place, movement to movement, go from one place to another. The Indian young people are questioning this thoroughly, to the point that this right here is one of the most exciting facts in our world today. Over 14,000 Indians will leave their Hindu idolatry today and embrace Jesus. Now, I use that in a kind of just a general, denominational type of term. 14,000 every single day. Click, click, click. What an open door. Now, in America, when our young people decide they want to leave the religion that they've been taught, what do they usually become? That's right, nothing. Sometimes we call it secular. Sometimes we call it humanism. Sometimes we even call it atheism. And, well, of course, there's always those who say, well, I'm not a Christian, but I'm spiritual. Yeah, But in India, that's not what happens. You see, America, we have a secular culture. But in India, it's religious from side to side. And so when a young person there decides they're no longer going to worship rocks and sticks and stones and critters, then they start looking for the truth. And that's when they come to us. You see, because that is what happens in India. We don't go to them. We show up, and they come to us. 14,000 a day. How'd you like to do evangelism in a setting like that? You are. And I hope you realize you are. You see, it's my hope that this morning after you leave here today, you leave excited about what the Lord is doing in your work. So let me move on just a little bit. This is the Indian side of our team. Now, we have on the Church of Christ Indian Missions, we have about 80 native-supported missionaries. These are men who we support. They're on our salary. These are not located gospel preachers. These are men who are traveling evangelists, and through them we do everything else that we do, whether it's children's homes or Bibles for the people or bicycles for preachers, preacher training schools, medical clinics, follow-up, lectureship series, other kinds of schools, congregational development, campaigns, gospel meetings, you name it. We do it all through these men that we are on our staff, and through them, over the last 30-plus years, the Lord has blessed us that we've been able to put together a network of more than 25,000 self-supporting native Indian gospel preachers. If you've got 25,000 people who are excited to tell people about Jesus, and you've got 14,000 a day who are making up their mind they want to hear the message of Jesus, how long before good things begin to happen? I hope you're feeling good about it. This is another way to look at it. Sometimes people ask me, they say, Dave, where do you work in India? Everywhere. Everywhere. Everywhere you see a name and a dot is a place that Church of Christ Indian Missions has a significant evangelistic work going. And each one of those places acts as a hub to reach out into neighboring states and neighboring districts, neighboring neighborhoods, neighboring whatever happens to be neighboring. And this is our report from last year. A lot of numbers up here. But I want to particularly draw your mind to this right here, this column. This is the number of gospel meetings. Last year, our team conducted over 500,000 gospel meetings in India. And I explained what those were during our Bible class hour. They're exact copies of what Peter did with Cornelius in Acts chapter 10. Over 500,000. Last year, the Lord blessed us. We were able to baptize into Christ over 1,060,000 individuals. If you can't get excited about being a part of that. That means our team last year conducted over 1,500 gospel meetings every single day. 1,500, 1,500, 15. Now, that's why I told you about the numbers otherwise. Before this, 1,500 meetings a day is a lot of meetings, but when you've got 25,000 workers doing the work, then that's what you should expect. And maybe a little bit more. Because you see, here's what happens. We don't pay these preachers. But these are the poorest of the poor. They work for their own self-support, and I don't mean they work for their own self-support in any kind of a highfalutin way. They work day wages, $1 a day, $2 a day. Most of them are farmers, some of them are bricklayers, some of them are this, that, and the others. And they get paid minimal wages. They are evangelistic. They do tell people about Jesus. They want to tell people about Jesus. But here's the one thing they can't do. They can't cover the expenses of traveling to do the gospel meetings. That's what most of our money goes for. Most of yours. Literally, you and I, we are empowering these people to do the things that the gospel drives them to do anyway. I hope you feel good about that. On average, last year our team baptized almost 3,000 people every single day. Acts chapter 2, do you remember that? It's alive and well in our modern world. Now, on average, we baptize less than 2 people for every gospel meeting. So what's really happening is nothing magic. It's just simply a lot of people face to face and eye to eye sharing the good news about Jesus. That's really what is going on in India. Now, this number right here. Well, let me share this. Our daily budget is $5,000 a day. That means we are able to teach and baptize someone into Christ on average for between $1 and $3, depending on where they live in the context. I don't know any place where the Lord's resources can go to better effect, with better effectiveness and better efficiency. Now, what's this right here? The special campaigns, 130,000 of those gospel meetings. Special campaigns are when someone gives us a very significant donation of some sort. Maybe they sell their house. Maybe they sell a business, sell a piece of land. Sometimes churches merge and they sell a building and donate that or part of that to this process. Sometimes someone dies and leaves us in their will or with a life insurance policy or something. So anybody want to sponsor a day? You know, you have been helping us. You are helping us. And I want to thank you. But please also realize that as impressive as these numbers are, we turn away our workers' requests to go hold gospel meetings. We turn away almost exactly the same number as we are able to pay for. We turn away half of them. And so it is urgent, the support that you're giving. Please, if you can find some other way to help us with a little bit more. I don't want you to take away from any good thing you're doing. I especially don't want you to take away from any good thing you're doing here, because this is the lifeblood of your church, of course. But if there is some way that you can find something extra, please help us. And if you want to, please fill out that form that's in the handout I gave you, because we want to give you the newsletter, either email or snail mail, either way. We want you to be advised and keep up with what is the great things that God is doing with us in India. Well, let me show you a little bit of kind of how it works a little bit better, a little differently. That's a place right there that we're getting ready to home in on in our little discussion. Get a little bit closer here. You can see this is a city of about 1 million. That's a city of about 800,000 underneath that. This is just Google Maps. And you get a little closer and you begin to see how this area right here, the roads are splitting. Okay, the roads are splitting because that's a rural area. But in India, half the people live in the cities and half the people live in the country. This is a massively populated area. So as we get a little closer, this is the town of Vadachirukuru. Anybody want to say that 3 times? Vadachirukuru. See all these little villages that now all of a sudden are appearing on the map? They're all over the place. In India, the rural areas, about every 2 miles, there's a village. There's a village. There's a village. There's a village. In America, we have 36,011 named towns. In India, it is over 500,000. Well, get a little closer here and see how it kind of develops there. There's the little villages out on the outlying area. We send these workers. These workers, I told you, where we pay their expenses, we bring them in to do campaigns. and do this all over India. But when we do this, we insist on getting reports back on what they do. And this is one of them. This is the team leader. This is the date of the meeting. This is the state where it was held. This is the district Guntur. There is the actual town, Vadacharukaru. This is the actual name of the village where the gospel meeting was held. Now, if it's in a larger city, then it would have a name of a colony here. We call them subdivisions, but they call them colonies. The smaller colony, even smaller little subdivisions. This is the name of the gospel preacher who taught them in those meetings. This is the name of the person who baptized those who responded. This is the number of the people who responded, and the total down here, 28. That's a little bit less than the average I showed you a few minutes ago. We literally have thousands of these reports come back to us every single year. Thousands and thousands and thousands. And we've got all of them physically in Hamilton, Alabama, if you ever want to come and take a look at them. This is how we keep track of what is going on. And I hope you're getting excited about what really is happening. Well, just to kind of back it out a little bit, just the same Vadacharukaru here, you back out and see, you get a context in where it is in India, and then so on. Now, here's one of the keys to what's happening in India. Uh-oh, that's kind of distorted. That didn't look that distorted before, did it? He and I, we looked through this. We really did. Anyway, these are the cities in America that have at least 1 million people, and you know what they are. But there are 10 of them in America, but in India, it's not 10 of them. Every single star you see is a city of at least 1 million people. Whew. This town right there is Chennai. It's a place where the Church of Christ India Missions has a lot of work going because it's 20 million people. Now, it's not the largest city in India, but there's several cities of that size there. But what I'm telling you here is there are more people in that one city than in all the states of America except 4. Only 4 states in America have a similar population to that city. You know what they are: California, Texas, New York, Florida. Every other state in America, including Michigan, has fewer people than that one city. And so what happens is we move. When you're that close together and you're that poor, and these are the poorest of the poor. You remember what Mark said about Jesus' ministry in Mark 12? He said, the poor heard him gladly. That's exactly what you're a part of. That is exactly what you're a part of. So we need your prayers, please. We absolutely need congregational help and individual help, and it is urgent, because just think about this. When someone invites you to come over and tell them about Jesus, what happens if you can't come until next month? Yeah, that's right. Most of the time the interest just somewhere evaporates. Can you sponsor a day? If you can, please. India is different. Remember this in your prayers. Remember this as you go home today. India is different. The Lord has opened a door. You are a part of it. All of the success that I'm sharing with you today is yours. By God's grace, it is yours and it is mine. It is ours because we are in Jesus and we are walking through the doors together. I hope you feel good.